this video, we have a horse with a classic issue of separation anxiety. So horses are naturally herd animals, and so it can be challenging to have one horse at a trailer or in a stall and take the other horse away. So we're gonna see if we can help Avery out in this video. So I'm here with Avery, and you brought your two horses, and tell us a little bit about, we're gonna be focusing on this one today. Tell us a little bit about some of the reasons that you wanted to get some help today.
Tanner used to be pretty dangerous to handle because he was so body sour being taken away from Diesel. There were times where he'd rear up and launch off his hind end with me. He's broken through stalls and stuff to get to Diesel.
Oh, wow.
And now he's kind of at the point where he's just kind of annoying to take to shows because he gets a little bit too excited, and then what's supposed to be a warm-up turns into just full-on like trying to gallop in circles around the arena.
Okay, so if you tried riding through it, he gets pretty impulsive and is running around. But if you leave him tied to the trailer,
he paces back and forth and paws. He used to rear up at the trailer too, but that's gotten better after he reared up and flipped over on himself.
Oh, wow.
So.
All right. Well, I'm glad you reached out for help. And I know you're into barrel racing and mounted shooting.
Right.
And you like to be able to bring both horses with you to different things.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah. And so this is a pretty, sometimes people just have an issue at home where they're just trying to separate their horses at home. But in this case, this is a real practical situation. We need to be able to bring both horses to a show, put one in this run and one in a different class or a different run. And so yeah, we got to see if we can work through this. So I want to kind of get a baseline of where they're at just on the ground if we separate them. Okay. And so we'll film that, and then we'll kind of get a plan together of what we need to do on the ground versus maybe what we need to do in the saddle, and we'll go from there. You're actually a Patreon member. So what are some things that you enjoy about being on Patreon?
You have a lot of exclusive videos just for Patreon members only. I really enjoy the monthly giveaway when I have time to get to do it. I haven't won it yet, but hopefully one of these days. But I know you have a decent amount of Patreon members anyways, so. But yeah, I think probably my favorite about it is the monthly giveaways.
Awesome, yeah. So if you guys want me to be your coach, I can do that through my Patreon page. So we post a new video there every Wednesday, and we do a monthly giveaway. And so there's a lot of content on there. There's some series on there of like colt starting, the fundamental series, things that I think every horse should know, which is some of the things I'm encouraging her to work on with this horse. She's already done it with Diesel, but I think investing some time into that with him is gonna be really good. So if you guys would like to be able to ask me questions about your horse, go ahead and get on that Patreon page. I'll leave a link up here in the video, as well as in the description below. Look forward to seeing you on there. So I want you to hold him.
Okay.
And I'm gonna take this horse away. And I just kind of want to get a baseline of how Tanner responds. So you can stay filming on Tanner. So we're filming Tanner right now, but I'm just taking Diesel away, and I got a gate over here.
No, you're not gonna freak out.
So Avery, why don't you tie him to the fence? Just take him and
What was
tie him to
that?
the fence over here. That side, facing your trailer. Just wrap him a couple wraps on there. We'll just see what he does there.
Okay.
If you're not in the equation. Little higher.
Higher.
So probably 4 wraps. And then keep filming him, Aaron, and then Avery, why don't you come out here towards me. Well, that's not too bad.
He has some days where he's a lot better, where he doesn't act like the same horse, and there's some days where he's just out of his head.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously this is a bit better,
Yeah.
but
Okay. Let's go back and we'll bring them together.
he's kind of at that point now where he kind of flip-flops around a little bit, paws, gets upset.
All right, so that wasn't too bad. And this tends to happen a bit where when horses come to my house, it's a new environment and they're a little bit stimulated just by being in a new environment, and so they're a little less concerned about these things. And it can go either way. It can get even worse, or it can be not as big a deal compared to when they're at home, or if he was just tied to the trailer, where the trailer, imagine they can't see as well. Here, he could still see Diesel as he was going away, so it didn't bother him as much. And also, when he was with Avery, he walked around a little bit, but you can see he's pretty upset over there. And so we're going to try to help him get a little more comfortable with that. But I think we're going to focus initially on, you need him to stand tied at a trailer is the most convenient. You're not going to always have a helper with you. So we can either get you a groom to take along with you, or we can focus on getting him to stand tied better. He's obviously more comfortable now that we brought Diesel back into the equation. So what I'm going to try to do is release him to being tied. So the idea is we're going to put both horses to work a little bit, and we're going to show them the relief as being tied. And we're going to build distance as we go. So you're not going to be able to see that super well. We can maybe pan over to where Diesel is as we progress further. But we want to set the pattern up to be achievable. So it's, in other words, I wanted to get a baseline idea of how bad it got to see where we were starting at. But what we're going to do is we're going to put both horses together and put them to work a little bit by each other. And then we're going to take him away a little ways to where he can be calm standing tied at the rail. Does that make sense? Now, I'm going to have a stick and string. You can probably just have your leader open. You can just move him around, but we might as well give him the same treatment of being happy to be separated there. And then once he can stand tied the way he is now with Diesel here, with Diesel being away from him, then we'll see if we can address this under saddle as well. So what I've learned so far is he's better when he's with his human, so that's good. That means Avery's been building some connection with him as the leader there, so that's a plus for Avery. So 10 points for that. But we need to address this horse's self-confidence, meaning when the human's not there, or either the human's on a loose rein or the horse is tied, that's addressing self-confidence. So if you're on the ground, it's distance. If they're tied up by themselves. And one of the things that I want to just throw in there to recommend to everybody is if you can practice like feeding horses separated or tying them up separated more regularly into your routine, this isn't something that you can fully address just in one training session. So my recommendation to Avery is we're going to get on a program and do this 3 to 5 days in a row. And then from there, it's going to be about her regularly separating Tanner specifically and tying him up somewhere, maybe when she's at home and not just at the show, so that becomes part of his routine to be comfortable standing tied by himself. Tying and feeding time, to me, are two easy ways that you can integrate into your program and do it regularly. If you're not always going to have a second person to work with the horse, right? And that's part of the dilemma. So it's not about one big training session, it's about setting up a routine, but we are going to try to get it to where the routine is less stressful for them. So my routine here is I usually work with them and then I go tie them up by themselves. So I don't take them out of their pen fresh and tie them up. We separate them at feeding time, or we'll separate them, like, so if I have a horse that's really herd bound here, I might take them into the barn and feed them, you know, if they'll eat and be comfortable enough to eat. And then sometimes the first few days don't go as well, but then by the 5th day they're like, okay, I'm realizing I'm going to go to my feed here, and then I get brought back. So something that you can integrate into your routine regularly is really the secret recipe for this. But we want to establish a good pattern here. So I'm going to bring him over by Diesel, and then we're going to put him to work just a little bit. And there's not a real specific exercise or maneuver that we need to do. It's more that I just need him to be a little bit uncomfortable when he's by Diesel. So I'm just going to maybe ask him to like side pass around Diesel, maybe do some changes of direction. So I'm just asking him to move his feet here as we go. So I'm letting him face Diesel, and then I'm putting some pressure on him to make this a little bit uncomfortable. Sorry, crowding you there a little bit. But again, there's not a really super specific thing. I just want him looking at this other horse, and I'm gonna put a little bit of pressure on him. Now we're gonna take him away. So you just walk away a little ways, Avery. And now I'm gonna release this horse over here. Now this will take a few times of creating a pattern of this. And then I'm going to step back away from him. Now that's probably good, Avery, right there. And so I'll move away from him, and we'll just kind of see baseline. So he licked and chewed. He moved around a little bit. He's not calling out, but Diesel's not very far away. You can kind of pan over to where Diesel is, so people kind of get an idea of reference point. So we're just, again, finding a bit of a starting point. And so now, go ahead and bring Diesel in closer. Tighten up my cinch here a little bit. Come on, a little closer even yet. I'm going to do the same move. We're just going to create a pattern. And so part of it is I want to have a little bit of consistency with what we're doing here. And side passing is a good one because it's kind of hard work. Change directions. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of groundwork and extra things we could be doing. I was talking to Avery earlier, and she doesn't do a ton of groundwork before she rides. I'm sure there's a lot of things that we could do in addition to that. But for this particular video, I want to just show a really kind of basic way to set up a new pattern that doesn't, forecast in a lot of really super proactive strategies. So I'll go ahead and take him away. So hair softer in his movement there. So he's whinnying now, so we'll go ahead and bring him right back together again. So again, just trying to get him to do a little disengagement in his hindquarters. And I'm trying to be a bit active, so I'm not just trying to be as soft as possible. The idea is that Tanner's on a little bit of hot lava right now. Okay, go ahead and take Diesel away. We're just going to add in a little timing element. Now I got a little lick and chew here, which means he's switching back to the sympathetic nervous system, getting a little more comfortable over here. Very good. So I would say there's probably a slight change there. He's like starting to see the pattern a little bit. Diesel's about the same distance from him here. And now he's looking off over there. He's kind of just looking at other things. So it's a little less about Diesel. So I would say that's the start of a little change starting to happen. Now it's about letting the pattern do the work and starting to grow the distance. So that's what we needed to get to as a starting point, somewhere that he could get a little more comfortable being tied. And I purposely didn't do a bunch of groundwork and stuff with him because I wanted to show people, like, if we get the horse really dialed in with some groundwork and get him really connected to the human, that may not be super realistic for everybody at home to try. But this is something that's relatively simple that most people can do. And I really like the change that we have going on there. So let's go ahead and bring Diesel back. And we're gonna keep building this pattern. This time, Avery, I'm gonna have you go another 10 to 20 feet, okay? Now, I'm choosing to do this now to continue building this pattern with him. But if you wanted to just leave that as your starting point for the day, that would be totally cool, okay? And then just build it, progress it tomorrow. So in other words, if he's standing there calm and relaxed, you could add quantity of time as the other variable here. So instead of like doing this again right now, I could have just waited until he got bothered again, and probably eventually he would have got a little upset. But for the sake of me only being able to do this one session with Avery and her horses and time and all that, we're just going to keep progressing it here today. But his yields could definitely be better, Avery. So he's a little sticky on the stick. So that's going to be your homework too, to kind of lighten that up a little bit.
Right, he's a pretty reactive horse, so it is kind of tougher to, I guess, work on that type of stuff with him because his first reaction is just 100% into it.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to take Diesel a little bit further this time. So I think that time I tried to offer him a little softer feel. He wasn't moving, and so because I didn't get the result I was looking for here, go ahead and bring him back. He's not comfortable there. I need to make it a little bit more hot lava, and this is part of it. So go ahead and bring him back. He's definitely bothered again on that round, and she didn't really get all that much further away. And so that tells me I need to do a little bit more over here. And that's part of horse training, is you have to be effective with your horses and the yields that you're doing, otherwise it's not going to work. So we're going to move this into a little bit more of a trot, and I'm making this just a little bit more hot lava over here than I did that last time. Because again, he's pretty bothered over there, and so I got to do enough to make it look like relief. Let's do 2 wraps this time. All right, we got a lick and chew that time. So that time I turned up the heat just enough to be effective. I always try to do as little as possible. But you have to be effective to be understood. So that's part of it. So she's a bit further away this time. And of course, classic, we got the garbage getting picked up right now. But so to me that time, that was the right amount of pressure. All right, we had another blowout that time. Very good. This, I think, is working. We're getting some levels of relief, but we need to reinforce this. Just based on how his yields feel on the ground, it would definitely be easier if he had a little better yields there, because he would be a little more connected to the human, being a little more thoughtful. But I definitely think this will be a strategy that you can utilize. And a way you can make this even simpler, Avery, there's a massive difference between taking the horse that's buddy sour away from their buddy where you're with them. The hardest scenario is tying them by themselves. So we're kind of going for the hardest level of this right off the bat. So feel free to modify this as you're working, but that's the general idea. Uncomfortable when they're together, relief when they're away. So I think what we'll do now, I'm pretty happy with how he did there because Diesel's quite a bit further away this time. And he's gotten pretty settled. He's not whinnying out. And so I think we're gonna go ahead and hop on him and work at this under saddle a little bit. So we're gonna work at this a little bit, and right away when I get on him, he's really forward and wants to go. And so then the other thing Avery was just telling me is that he's actually 16 years old. And so I should have asked that in the beginning how old he was, but when a horse has some age to him, you go ahead and turn and face the camera if you don't mind. When a horse is a bit older, it's like there's 100% chance that changes can still be made, but it's usually just a little bit slower. One of the ways that I compare it is like, if you've drove your car for 100,000 miles and never reset the like average miles per gallon, you could like take off really fast from a stop sign multiple times and that average miles per gallon isn't gonna change because the average is so many miles that it's factoring in. But if you reset it and you've only gone 100 miles and then you step on it at a stop sign and go really fast, you're gonna see the miles per gallon drop down right away. And so that's kind of like that with a young horse, that it's pretty easy because their hour meter of time with humans is a lot less. It's fairly easy to make changes fairly quickly. Does that make sense? Yeah. But when a horse has more hours on their meter, the changes can still happen, but they're gonna be a little slower there to begin with. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna work him around Avery here a little bit. And I'm just working on bending him and just asking him for some softness here. Through his ribs and bending him here. But notice I'm using Avery as bait here with her horse, Diesel. And then I can do some changes of direction. And then what's hard about showing you guys this for this particular scenario is he doesn't want to stand still even right next to him. He wants, he gets on, he was ready to go somewhere. So there's quite a few other things to kind of work on in addition to him being more herd bound. But let's just go ahead and move this into a trot here. So it's the exact same idea. I'm trying to make it uncomfortable for him to be here. But if you ever wanted to trail ride them kind of separately, like of course this would be a challenging thing if he only really wants to be by Diesel. Okay, so I'm gonna stand here and you can go ahead and ride away. And right away he wants to go back, so go ahead and stop. So I'm gonna say, oh, you wanna go back by your buddy, that's fine. And honestly, for you guys watching, the main thing that Avery needs out of this is what we just did with the standing tide. But I wanna show you guys that are dealing with some other scenarios of maybe you have two horses that you bring somewhere and you're trying to ride both of them, but they're only thinking about being next to each other. You can't get done what you want to get done because they're only really just attached to each other. So this is one way of just trotting around this other horse, changing directions, and it's great that Diesel's being super cooperative. So I'm trying to use my inside leg and put a little pressure to bend his ribs and ask him for a little bend in his head and neck. And maybe I'm gonna try this other time. I'm gonna make it a half notch easier by just facing this direction. And you can go ahead and ride away. So right away he wants to go back there again. So I'm gonna say, okay, you can go ahead and do that. Go back to moving his feet. Well, he's got a smooth lope.
I don't think so, but. But like I said, most of the time you kind of try to clear them out.
Yeah, very good. So this time I switched it up and I'm just gonna go ahead and stand here and I'll stop there, Avery. Now, one thing I'm gonna do here is as he's riding towards Avery, I'm gonna pick him up with the reins and bring my legs on and redirect him away from her. So I'm gonna change the strategy now. And I'm just gonna let him get relief going kind of over to the same spot where I was asking him to be tied. We'll just keep offering him this standstill. And so I modified the pattern. It was too hard to have Avery ride her horse away from him, but I can ride him away from her horse. Now he wants to go back, no big deal, let that happen. And I have a couple options here. I can just pick him up here and just make this generally a little bit uncomfortable to being faced that way. And then I soften up and I release him back facing this direction. So this would be so if you were just riding and you were at a clinic or something, This is just something really simple you could be peppering in while you're riding, is when he gets sweet on the other horse, just go ahead and pick up the reins, interrupt that forward movement, redirect him a different direction, and put the reins back down. And you could ask him to stand still there, or you could ask him to continue riding around. But anytime he gets facing Diesel and Avery, I'm just gonna pick him up, make that a little bit uncomfortable, redirect him away, and you can see the pattern is just really simple. So this is one way to do this. The other way to do this is I could just reach down with one rein and roll back. I don't know if one's better than the other. This one seems fairly obvious to him because it has a stronger whoa element to it. There, he just took a deep breath and is standing here pretty patiently. So I'm gonna take that as a win. Because this has a whoa element to it when I pick up both reins, I felt like that was a good strategy for him. Okay, but let me go ahead and, now that he's being good, instead of me just waiting until he chooses to leave, so this is the first time he's committed to staying. And also, I just want to point out, notice there's nothing in me that's telling this horse to be here. So many people would have their reins short and just trying to make him stay here. He can totally go back over there if he wants to. There's nothing in me that's telling him he can't be here. And that's part of what helps him get more comfortable. If there's any part of me that's trying to make him stay over here, he's gonna feel that as pressure, and all of a sudden my sweet spot over here is no longer a sweet spot. It's kind of starting to become a little hot lava, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze him now and see where he wants to go. Ooh, I really like that. So he took a couple steps forward there, and now he's headed back to Diesel. So I'm gonna let him head back this way. I might even move him into a little bit of a trot, and now I'm gonna reach down in one rein and just roll back. And so I'm changing the strategy yet again here, just because I'm trying to show you guys at home watching some different options. He's choosing to ride away from Diesel over here, so I'll say cool, we'll accept that. So as long as he's not trying to take me to Diesel, we're cool. We'll just leave him away. I'm gonna kind of ask him to turn into Diesel here a little bit. I'm gonna reach down, I'm gonna roll back. I'm trying to avoid this part of the arena. We got a massive thunderstorm this morning, and so my arena's swamped out over there a little bit too much. Ooh, this is really good. So he's taking me over here more. And again, I'm trying not to direct him too much. If he wants to turn around and head back to Diesel, we'll let him. Now I'm gonna turn him the opposite way. So I'm gonna reach down, get a hold of him, and redirect him the opposite way where he took over. And you can also do this, an exercise that I like to call making the arena neutral. And I heard that phrase from a friend of mine named Tick Maynard, and it's a great way of saying it. Every arena has spots in it that horses would rather go. And so in this case, he would kind of rather go over here to Diesel. So I'm gonna reach down, I'm gonna roll back. And the idea is that arenas have sweet spots like the gate or the side closest to the horse pens where the other horses live. And then the arenas can also have drive spots where, like, maybe the scary tree line where there's some shadows and noises of little critters rustling around in there that they tend to avoid. And so you can use this for any of those options, you know. So I'm gonna kind of sign him up here to riding towards Diesel. He was leaning that way, but I went ahead and steered him that way. And now I'm gonna go ahead and offer him the standstill over here again. So I'm just gonna ask him to stop and settle. Very cool. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think he's responding to it pretty well. And again, this isn't about fixing everything in one day. This is something that you got to pepper into your regular routine and build in it as you go. If you can get a regular routine of tying your horses separate, feeding your horses separate, that's going to be one of the best strategies for building self-confidence with a horse that has separation anxiety. You know, and if it was leaving them in a pen or a pasture, you could play the same game there. I may leave a halter on them. I have another video on this that we did a while ago, where you could go into that pen, hook them up to the lead rope, take them out of the pen, put them to work a little bit, hot lava, bring them back into the pen and give them relief. Any of those options. It's just about making their idea of being back with the herd a little bit uncomfortable and showing them where the relief is. So you have to make sure you're doing less if they're tied or standing still here or being left in a pen by themselves, and just making it uncomfortable somewhere else so that they find relief here. If you can do that connecting to the other horse, that works even better. And yeah, well, thank you very much, Avery, for coming out. And thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like and hit the subscribe button. We'll see you guys on the next one.